Commander Zephyr stared at the tactical display, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed the impossible data streaming across his console. The bridge of the GSV Stellar Wisdom hummed with the nervous energy of 12 different species, all equally baffled by what they were seeing. "Run the atmospheric analysis again," Zephyr commanded, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard galactic. "There has to be an error." Lieutenant Quill, a methodical Zentorian with silicon-based biology, manipulated the sensor array with practiced precision. "Sir, the readings are consistent. Planet Cathara-7 maintains a Class-XII Deathworld designation. Atmospheric toxicity levels are off the charts. The air contains enough sulfur compounds to dissolve most known hull materials within hours." "And the wildlife?" Zephyr's primary tentacle twitched with anxiety. "Apex predators in every ecological niche, Commander. The smallest recorded creature could tear through battle armor like tissue paper. The largest ones." Quill paused, double-checking his instruments. "Well, sir, our scanners classify them as walking extinction events." Zephyr's translator couldn't capture the sarcastic grunt he made. "Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful." The Galactic Survey Fleet had been tracking mysterious energy signatures from this sector for 6 months. Standard protocol dictated they investigate any signs of civilization, especially distress signals. What they'd found instead was a planet that should have been quarantined since the dawn of space travel. "Weather patterns?" he asked, though he already dreaded the answer. "Catastrophic, sir. Hurricane-force winds are considered a light breeze. The temperature swings between freezing and boiling within hours. Oh, and there's the acid rain. Lots of acid rain." "Perfect," Zephyr muttered. "So we're looking at a world where the air kills you, the animals eat you, and the weather dissolves what's left. Remind me again why we're not just marking this system as a navigation hazard and leaving." Ensign Flux, a young crystalloid whose enthusiasm hadn't yet been crushed by bureaucracy, practically vibrated with excitement. "Sir, the energy signatures we detected aren't natural. They're organized, structured. Someone's broadcasting from down there?" "Probably automated distress beacons," Zephyr said, settling back into his command chair. "Some poor expedition that landed here and got themselves killed. We'll record the location, file a report, and let the salvage crews figure out how to retrieve their remains without joining them." "Actually, sir," Flux continued, his voice rising with barely contained amazement, "the signals aren't distress calls. They're entertainment broadcasts. Music, I think. And cooking shows. Lots of cooking shows." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of life support systems. Zephyr's 4 eyes focused on the young ensign with the intensity of a plasma cannon. "Cooking shows," he repeated slowly. "Yes, sir." "From a settlement called Paradise Falls. Population approximately 50,000 and growing." "Growing," Zephyr said, his voice flat. "Yes, sir. Birth rates are actually quite healthy for a frontier colony." Commander Zephyr looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. 12 different species, representing the finest scientific minds the galaxy had to offer. Their expressions ranged from confusion to outright terror. He couldn't blame them. In 3 decades of galactic survey work, he'd never encountered anything this absurd. He said finally, "Take us into orbit. Maintain maximum safe distance. Science teams prepare for full planetary analysis. And someone get me a connection to High Command." They're never going to believe this. As the stellar wisdom descended toward the impossible world below, Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to make contact with something that would fundamentally challenge everything they thought they knew about survival, intelligence, and the basic laws of physics. He was, as it turned out, absolutely right. Science Officer Nexus had run the biological scans 17 times. Each result was more impossible than the last. His crystalline form pulsed with frustrated energy as he recalibrated the sensors for the 18th attempt. "Commander," he called across the bridge, his voice carrying the precise tones of someone who had spent years studying the impossible and was getting really tired of it. The readings on these humans, they're completely contradictory to known biology." Zephyr floated over to the science station, his tentacles already twitching with anticipation. Define contradictory, Nexus, and please use small words. My sanity is hanging by a thread here. Well, sir, according to our scans, they're carbon-based life forms with a shockingly primitive genetic structure. Their bones are made of calcium phosphate, which should crumble under the gravitational stress of this planet. Their skin is paper-thin by galactic standards, offering no protection against the corrosive atmosphere. And yet they're walking around like they own the place. Look at this. Nexus activated the main view screen, showing a feed from their reconnaissance drones. The image revealed a human settlement that defied every law of survival known to galactic science. A large human male was casually scratching behind the ears of what the computer identified as a Class-XII Deathstalker. The creature, which stood 3 meters tall and possessed claws that could slice through titanium, was purring like a contented house pet. That's impossible, whispered Lieutenant Quill. Deathstalkers are apex predators. They hunt in packs and have never been domesticated by any species. Oh, it gets better, Nexus said, his tone dripping with scientific despair. Watch this. The screen shifted to show a group of human children playing what appeared to be a simple game of tag. Except they were running through a field of acid bloom flowers, plants whose pollen could blind most galactic species permanently. The children were laughing, completely unaware that they were playing in what was essentially a chemical weapons testing ground. Sir, Ensign Flux called from the communication station. We're receiving a transmission from the settlement. Put it through, Zephyr ordered, steeling himself for whatever fresh madness awaited. The screen flickered, revealing a middle-aged human with weathered features and an easy smile. He was holding a steaming cup of something that made the ship's atmospheric sensors scream danger warnings. Well, ho there, folks, the human said, his voice carrying a relaxed drawl that somehow made everything sound perfectly reasonable. Name's Marcus Kane, and I'm what passes for mayor around these parts. Welcome to Paradise Falls. Sorry about the planetary defense grid lighting up your sensors. We don't get many visitors. Planetary defense grid? Zephyr muttered. I didn't see any defensive installations. Marcus chuckled, taking a sip from his cup. Oh, you mean the weather? Yeah, that keeps most folks away. But don't worry, it's supposed to calm down later. Only expecting Category 3 acid storms this afternoon. Category 3? Nexus whispered. Our hull can't withstand Category 1 exposure for more than minutes. Anyway. What? Marcus continued, I figured you might want to come down for a visit. Luna Park, our engineer, she's been dying to get a look at your ship. Says the propulsion signatures are real interesting. And Jack Stone, our agricultural specialist. He's got some questions about your atmospheric recycling systems. How do they know about our systems? Zephyr asked no one in particular. Oh, and Doc Maya Cross wanted me to ask if any of your crew needs medical attention. She's been studying galactic physiology in her spare time. Real fascinating stuff, she says. The transmission ended abruptly as what appeared to be a massive explosion rocked the settlement. Alarms began blaring across the alien bridge as their sensors detected seismic activity equivalent to a small nuclear detonation. Shields up! Zephyr shouted. Damage assessment. But before anyone could respond, the transmission resumed. Marcus was still there, completely unruffled, though his hair was now slightly mussed. Sorry about that, he said, brushing dust off his shoulders. Tommy Rivers was showing off his new pet again. Kids these days, am I right? Anyway, you folks want to come down for coffee? I just brewed a fresh pot using those lovely berries that grow near the lava flows. They've got a real kick to them. The bridge of the stellar wisdom fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the quiet sound of Lieutenant Quill's nervous system shutting down. Against his better judgment, Commander Zephyr authorized a closer orbital approach. What they observed over the next few hours challenged every assumption about intelligence, technology, and basic survival instincts that the Galactic Survey Fleet had ever made. Sir, Nexus reported, his voice carrying the strained tone of someone whose worldview was being systematically demolished. The humans are using what appears to be hammered metal and wooden handles to construct buildings that our structural analysis software cannot properly model. What do you mean, cannot model? Zephyr asked, though he suspected he really didn't want to know. I mean, sir, that according to our calculations, those structures should collapse under their own weight. They're built using principles that violate basic engineering physics. Yet they're not only standing, they're expanding. On the main screen, they watched a human woman with grease-stained coveralls directing the construction of what appeared to be a communications array. Luna Park, if Zephyr remembered correctly. She was using a device that looked suspiciously like a primitive hammer to adjust components that their own engineers would need microscopic precision tools to handle. And she's hitting it? Lieutenant Quill observed, his voice filled with the kind of wonder usually reserved for witnessing the birth of stars. That's called percussive maintenance, Flux said, consulting his database. Apparently, it's a common human problem-solving technique. That's not problem-solving, Nexus protested. That's just hitting things until they work. Yes, sir? And according to our sensors, it's working perfectly. The screen shifted to show another impossibility. A human male, presumably Jack Stone, was riding what the computer identified as a Kytheran ridge crusher. The creature was the size of a small shuttle, possessed natural armor plating that could deflect plasma fire, and was generally considered to be one of the most dangerous predators in known space. Jack Stone was using it to plow fields. How? Zephyr whispered. Just how, sir? Ensign Flux called out. We're detecting massive atmospheric disturbances heading toward the settlement. A Category 5 acid storm, with wind speeds that would strip the paint off our hull. Alert the humans, Zephyr ordered. They need to take shelter immediately. But as they watched, the humans barely seemed to notice the approaching storm. A few of them put on what appeared to be cloth jackets. Children were called inside, but only after they finished whatever game they were playing. The massive predators that served as their livestock simply lay down and took naps. Sir, Nexus said, his voice barely above a whisper, the storm is making direct contact with the settlement. The wind speeds registered on their sensors were sufficient to tear apart most galactic structures. The acid concentration in the rain was strong enough to dissolve their reconnaissance drones. The electromagnetic interference was so intense that it knocked out 3 of their communication arrays. And the humans treated it like a mild inconvenience. Marcus Kane is back on the comm, Flux reported. Put him through, Zephyr said, though he wasn't sure his sanity could handle much more of this. The human appeared on screen, now wearing what looked like a simple rain jacket. Behind him, the storm raged with apocalyptic fury. Sorry about the weather, folks, Marcus said, raising his voice slightly over the wind. It's a bit chilly today. Hope your equipment is holding up all right. A bit chilly? Zephyr repeated. That storm is registering as a planetary-scale disaster event. Oh, this? Marcus glanced over his shoulder at the howling maelstrom. This is nothing. You should see it during winter. Anyway, I wanted to let you know that Luna figured out what's wrong with your sensor array. What's wrong with our sensor array? Well, according to her, you're using quantum phase discriminators when you should be using simple electromagnetic resonance detectors. She rigged up a replacement using some scrap metal and an old coffee maker. It should work much better in this atmosphere. Nexus made a sound that might have been laughter if laughter could convey complete psychological breakdown. She fixed our sensor array with a coffee maker. Oh, and she wanted to know if you'd like a tour of our power facility. It's pretty interesting if you're into that sort of thing. 20 minutes later, despite every regulation in the Galactic Safety Manual, they found themselves watching a live feed from the human power station. What they saw defied not just common sense, but several fundamental laws of physics. The humans had built their entire power grid around a controlled volcanic vent. They were literally harnessing the planet's molten core to generate electricity. The facility was staffed by humans who worked in temperatures that should have turned them into vapor, breathing air that should have killed them instantly. "This is suicide," Quill whispered. "They're standing on top of a volcano and using it as a power source." "Efficient, though," Luna Park said, having somehow patched into their communications. "We get about 3 times the output of standard fusion reactors, and the maintenance costs are practically nothing. Just have to replace the heat shields every few months." "Heat shields?" Nexus asked weakly. "Oh, those are just sheets of metal we hammer into shape. Nothing fancy. Tommy Rivers made the current set for his school engineering project." Commander Zephyr closed his 4 eyes and tried to remember what it felt like when the universe made sense. "Commander." Marcus Kane's voice crackled through the comm system, yet cheerful as ever despite the fact that he was standing next to what their sensors classified as a controlled nuclear explosion. "Doc Maya wanted me to extend a dinner invitation. She's been working on a special menu for you folks, using all the local ingredients." Zephyr looked around his bridge crew. Nexus was quietly rocking back and forth in his chair. Lieutenant Quill had started drinking something that might have been alcohol, though regulations strictly forbade it. But Ensign Flux was the only one who still seemed excited about this whole situation, which was honestly more terrifying than everything else combined. "Local ingredients?" Zephyr asked, though he already knew he was going to regret the question. "Oh yes, sir. We've got flame fruit salad, acid berry pie, and the main course is roasted spine ripper with a nice poison oak glaze. It's delicious, I promise, sir," Nexus whispered. "Our database lists those as class of toxins. Exposure to any one of them would kill most galactic species within minutes." "But it's delicious," Marcus repeated, as if that somehow made it better. Against every regulation, safety protocol, and basic survival instinct he possessed, Zephyr found himself authorizing a diplomatic landing party. The official report would list it as cultural exchange. The truth was, he simply had to see this madness for himself. The shuttle touched down in Paradise Falls 3 hours later, though touchdown was perhaps generous. The landing thrusters failed halfway through descent, victims of the planet's hostile atmosphere. They crashed into what appeared to be a carefully prepared landing zone, complete with cushioning materials and emergency response teams. "Don't worry about the rough landing," Jack Stone called out, waving from beside his ridge crusher. "Happens all the time. Luna will have your shuttle fixed up in no time." "Fixed up?" Zephyr asked, surveying the wreckage of their previously pristine diplomatic vessel. "Oh sure. She's got a knack for that sort of thing. Uses whatever she can find lying around. Your shuttle will be better than new by tomorrow." The dinner was, without exaggeration, the most terrifying meal of frying meal of Zephyr. The humans had gone all out, preparing what they clearly considered to be a feast. Every dish was made from ingredients that should have been stored in a hazardous materials vault, not served on dinner plates. "Try the flame fruit," Maya Cross encouraged, her medical scanner somehow reading their vital signs despite being built from what appeared to be spare parts and good intentions. "It's got a nice kick to it." "A nice kick," Nexus muttered. "That registers as a small thermonuclear reaction on our sensors." But the real comedy began when the aliens, in a desperate attempt to be helpful, tried to assist with what they assumed were primitive human tasks. Lieutenant Quill volunteered to help with food preparation, confident that his advanced training would make him useful in the kitchen. He managed to set water on fire. Actual water. In a pot. "How?" Luna Park asked, staring at the flaming liquid with genuine curiosity. "I mean, that's actually pretty impressive. What did you do?" I don't know," Quill admitted, his voice hollow with defeat. "I was trying to boil water for tea." "Well, you certainly did something to it," Jack Stone observed, using a simple wooden spoon to extinguish the flames. "You might want to stick to the eating part of dinner." The cultural demonstrations that followed were equally bewildering. The humans had prepared what they called entertainment for their guests. First was music, performed by a local band using instruments that their audio sensors couldn't properly classify. Those sound frequencies should be causing permanent hearing damage, Nexus whispered, but the humans were clapping along enthusiastically. And the resonance patterns, Flux added, consulting his instruments, they're somehow creating harmonic frequencies that don't exist in normal space-time. The sports demonstration was even worse. The humans had organized a friendly game of what they called volcano ball, played on a court that was literally built over an active lava flow. The rules appeared to involve throwing a ball made from crystallized acid through hoops while avoiding jets of superheated gas. "This is insane," Zephyr muttered, watching a human child casually catch a ball that was registering temperatures hot enough to melt their hull plating. "It's just a game," Tommy Rivers called out, having somehow overheard the alien commander despite being 50 meters away and surrounded by volcanic noise. "Want to try? We've got protective gear." The protective gear turned out to be cloth uniforms that their sensors assured them offered no protection against anything more dangerous than a light breeze. The final blow to their sanity came when Commander Zephyr, in a moment of desperate pride, decided to demonstrate the superiority of galactic technology. He activated his personal defense system, a state-of-the-art plasma shield generator that could deflect asteroid impacts. It immediately began sparking, smoking, and making sounds that technology was definitely not supposed to make. "Oh dear," Maya Cross said, pulling out what appeared to be a diagnostic tool made from kitchen utensils and spare electronics. "Your shield generator is having a reaction with the local atmosphere. The sulfur compounds are creating a feedback loop in your power matrix." "That's impossible," Zephyr protested. "This equipment is rated for Class X environments." "Well, this is a Class HFY environment," Marcus Kane pointed out reasonably. "That might be the problem." Within minutes, Maya had jury-rigged a solution using what appeared to be a rubber band, a piece of scrap metal, and something that might have been chewing gum. The shield generator began functioning perfectly. "There you go," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Should work fine now, though you might want to recalibrate your power output. You're running about 3 times higher than optimal." "How did you know that?" Nexus asked weakly. "Oh, I could hear it in the harmonic resonance," Maya replied, as if that explained everything. "Same principle we use for tuning our mining equipment." As the evening wound down, Zephyr found himself sitting on what the humans called a porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that their atmospheric processors assured him were toxic. The humans had given him a cup of something they called tea, made from plants that should have dissolved his internal organs. It was, he had to admit, actually quite pleasant. The next morning brought what Commander Zephyr would later describe in his official report as the moment when everything we thought we knew about human civilization was turned completely upside down and then set on fire. It started innocently enough. Marcus Kane had invited the alien delegation for what he called a little tour of our expansion projects. Zephyr had expected to see more of the same impossible survival techniques they'd been witnessing. Instead, he found himself staring at a construction site that defied every assumption about human technology. "This is our new resort complex," Marcus explained, gesturing toward what appeared to be a massive structure that seemed to be growing rather than being built. "We're expecting about 10,000 visitors next season." "Visitors?" Nexus squeaked, his voice cracking with strain. "From where?" "Oh, all over," Luna Park said, joining them with her usual cheerful demeanor. "We've got folks coming from the burning worlds, the ice hells, and even a few from the radiation zones. Paradise Falls is becoming quite the vacation destination." "Vacation destination?" Zephyr repeated slowly. "This is a Class-XII Deathworld." "Exactly," Jack Stone chimed in, riding up on his Ridge Crusher. "Perfect weather, friendly wildlife, and all the amenities of home. The folks from the crushing depths especially love it here. They say the low pressure is so relaxing." "Low pressure?" Lieutenant Quill whispered. "The atmospheric pressure here would crush most galactic species like tin cans. That's what makes it such a great vacation spot," Maya Cross added. appearing from what looked like a medical facility that was somehow performing surgery on 3 different species simultaneously. Very therapeutic. The truth began to dawn on Zephyr with the slow, inevitable certainty of a collapsing star. "You're not just surviving here," he said. "You're thriving. This isn't even challenging for you." "Well," Marcus said, scratching his head with what appeared to be genuine modesty, "it took us a few months to get the hang of the local ecosystem. But once Luna figured out how to reverse engineer your propulsion systems, things got a lot easier." "Reverse engineer our what now?" Zephyr's voice went up several octaves. "Oh, your ships have fascinating technology," Luna said, pulling out a device that looked suspiciously like an improved version of their own quantum communicators. "Really elegant design, though the power efficiency could use some work. I made a few modifications." "Modifications?" Nexus stared at the device, which was now displaying readings that their own equipment couldn't match. "Just minor improvements," Luna said with a wave of her hand. "Nothing fancy. Jack here figured out how to improve your atmospheric processors, and Maya's been working on some upgrades to your medical systems." "We've been studying your technology since you arrived," Maya admitted, her tone suggesting she was confessing to something mildly embarrassing rather than impossible. "Hope you don't mind. It's just so interesting to see how other species approach engineering problems." "Studying our technology?" Zephyr felt something that might have been his sanity making a final desperate attempt to maintain some grip on reality. "But you're using primitive tools, hammers and coffee makers." "Oh, that," Jack laughed. "We find that simple tools work better in harsh environments, but complex technology tends to break down under stress. But the underlying principles are pretty advanced. I should know, I used to design starship engines before I took up farming." "Starship engines?" Quill's voice was barely audible. "Oh yes," Maya said. "I was a xenobiology specialist before I moved here." And Luna, she was head of advanced propulsion research at the Galactic Engineering Institute. Head of advanced propulsion research? Zephyr felt the last fragments of his worldview crumbling into dust. "It's a living," Luna said modestly. "Though I have to say, farming is much more relaxing. Less stress, better hours, and the ridge crushers are excellent for field work." "So let me get this straight," Nexus said, his voice carrying the careful tone of someone trying very hard not to have a complete psychological breakdown. "You're all highly advanced scientists and engineers who moved to a death world to relax?" "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds silly," Marcus said. "But yes, basically. The pace of life here is much more agreeable than in the core worlds." Commander Zephyr looked around at the primitive settlement, seeing it now with new eyes. The casual mastery of their environment, the impossible technology disguised as simple tools, the way they'd effortlessly solved problems that stumped galactic engineers. They hadn't encountered a primitive colony surviving against impossible odds. They'd found a vacation resort run by some of the most advanced minds in human space, who considered a Class-XII Deathworld to be a relaxing change of pace. The peaceful morning was interrupted by the arrival of 3 Galactic Fleet dreadnoughts, their massive hulls bristling with enough firepower to level continents. Admiral Corax's voice boomed across all communication channels, filled with righteous authority and complete ignorance. "Attention, primitive settlement. This is Admiral Corax of the Galactic Fleet. We are here to rescue our survey team from your dangerous world. Surrender immediately, and we will ensure your safe relocation to a more suitable planet." Commander Zephyr frantically tried to reach his superior officer. "Admiral, sir, you don't understand. These humans aren't dangerous. Well, they are, but not in the way you think. Commander, your distress beacon has been active for 18 hours. We're here to extract you from this hostile situation." "What distress beacon?" Zephyr looked around his bridge crew, all of whom shrugged in confusion. "The one Luna rigged up yesterday," Marcus Kane said, appearing on screen with his usual calm demeanor. "She thought your people might be worried about you. Though I have to say, your admiral seems a bit excitable." On the main screen, they watched the 3 dreadnoughts begin powering up their weapons systems. The humans of Paradise Falls observed this development with the mild interest of people watching a particularly aggressive weather pattern. "Admiral," Luna Park's voice cut across the communication channels, "I'm reading some serious instabilities in your port fusion reactors. You might want to shut those down before they create a cascade failure." "How do you know about our reactor systems?" Admiral Corax demanded. "Oh, I upgraded them about an hour ago," Luna replied cheerfully. "Remote access through your sensor arrays. Hope you don't mind. They're about 40% more efficient now." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of 3 dreadnought crews frantically running diagnostics on systems that were now performing better than their designers had ever intended. "We'll be going now," Admiral Corax said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "Commander Zephyr, report to my ship immediately." "Actually," Marcus Kane interrupted, "they're welcome to stay as long as they like. We were just about to start the evening entertainment." Tommy Rivers trained his pet spine ripper to do tricks. As the stellar wisdom departed Paradise Falls, Commander Zephyr found himself composing what would become the most unbelievable report in Galactic Fleet history. "How do you explain to High Command that you've discovered a species that treats the impossible as routine, the deadly as amusing, and the catastrophic as a mild inconvenience?" His final log entry was simple: recommend immediate diplomatic contact with human settlements. Also recommend updating our definition of primitive civilization. Current classifications appear to be somewhat inadequate. 6 months later, Paradise Falls received its first official diplomatic mission. They were greeted with fresh coffee, locally grown pie, and an invitation to try volcano surfing. The diplomat's report was filed under fiction by mistake and promptly forgotten.